Welcome to the Everyman Show. You know, evil doesn't run on a schedule. Evil will attack you when you least expect it, and that's why one of our values here at the Everyman Show is to make sure you are equipped when evil comes knocking at your door. And today we're really excited here to have with us Mark Geist, who saw evil attack and did something about it. He's going to be joining us for a three-part series entitled Stand Up and Fight. Mark played the character of Oz in 13 Hours. You probably saw that, and he was a part of saving many American lives in the fight of Benghazi on September 12th, 2012. That movie, 13 Hours, directed by Michael Bay, gave us a true, detailed account of the events that took place and how a special group of men did what was necessary to save innocent lives. We are stoked to have him with us to share his story and discuss how his faith led him on the battlefield. Mark, I want to thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, we want to jump right in, and just maybe you can start by telling our listeners a little bit about your background and how did you end up in Benghazi?
I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible, but you know, I grew up in eastern Colorado, out on the plains. It was farming and ranching. I was rodeoing as a kid, and just really the good life. I mean, I loved what I did and where I was at, and graduated high school, went in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps for 12 years, got out and become a police officer. I was a deputy sheriff, did crimes against children for about 3 years, and did some vice and narcotics work. And then I took a job as chief of police in a small town. Finished that out, and I started my own business doing bounty hunting and bail bonds. And then
You've done it all.
And then when the war kicked off in 2001,
Right.
I just started trying to find a way to get over there, and ended up heading over there in 2004 as a private security contractor.
Can you tell us a little bit about what a private security contractor does?
You know, there's a lot of different jobs for the security contractors, especially in places where there's people out there who want to kill Americans. And when I first went over, I was a diplomatic security officer or a contractor for State Department. I protected State Department personnel. And
Okay.
while they would go out and do their meetings and things like that and take care of State Department business. And after that contract, I started training Iraqi SWAT teams.
Wow.
And lived with about 600 Iraqis out in Baghdad. And another job I did that is out there is I was a security advisor to Dr. Ayed Alawi. He was one of the former prime ministers of Iraq.
Wow.
And then I ended up working for the CIA, who I like to say is the Culinary Institute of America.
We can get into that, but
that's how I ended up protecting case officers as they go about their job. And you know, there's a lot of jobs for security contractors, but most of it's in training either local nationals, contracting on U.S. government contracts, or protecting U.S. personnel.
we saw a little bit of that in the movie 13 Hours.
Yeah.
That's right. And so when did you get the call? Like who called you for this job in Libya?
Well, I had been in another one of those countries that ends in Stan, and I've been in most of them.
Most of the stands.
And I was looking for the next place to go.
Okay.
And I mean, just the way I am, I was looking for I want to go to the roughest and toughest. And
Wow.
because my next one after that leap was I was trying to get into Syria if we'd ever get into there. Which
Wow.
That's just
So what's going through my mind is you knew that the situation in Libya was super unstable. When did you know, when you got that contract and you're in Benghazi, that kind of a larger fight was coming your way? When did you know?
out of most of the countries I've been in, Benghazi seemed to be pretty calm.
Really?
I mean, there was a lot of militias, because in and around Benghazi, there was probably 10 or 12, 15 militias, and each one of them, you know, they were vying to control, because there was no government assets or government, not U.S., but Libyan government infrastructure. So you had one militia that controlled the airport, and anything that come in and out of there, they taxed it. I mean, if it was the seaport, another one controlled that, taxed that, overland traffic. I mean, that's how they were making their money off the people. And
wow.
The average Libyan that I met, I mean, they were glad that Gaddafi was gone, that they were out.
Right.
I mean, you know, they were just worried about the same thing most of us are worried about. They wanted to get their kids to school safely. They wanted to be able to make $1 without the government taking 3/4 of it out of their back pocket and live a safe life.
So they were glad that he was gone.
Yeah.
But then the militia came in and kind of,
Well, yeah,
they
and
were
the
hurting their
militias
own
kind
people?
of, well, yeah, the militias are going to do the same thing. I mean, you know, you get rid of one
dictator.
One
another
dictator,
comes in.
there's going to be the next.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're all fighting for that power.
You're doing your thing. You're a contractor in Benghazi, and then the news comes that Ambassador Stevens.
Ambassador
Has
Stevens
been
was going
killed.
to come down. Well,
Yeah.
initially he was going to come down, and the whole reason that he came down is there had been a pilot earlier in latter 2011 that had gotten shot down, a U.S. pilot.
That's right.
And this local was able to find him and hide him out and get him back to U.S. forces. Well, this same guy had a school in Benghazi, and he was opening an English-speaking section of it.
Oh.
So the ambassador came down to do the ribbon cut ceremony to honor the guy that helped save
That's why
America's
he was
lives.
there.
That's why he was there.
Wow. He was there for a ribbon cutting
Yeah.
ceremony for a school.
Yep.
And so, what's first news that you get? Where are you? What's going through your mind? What's first news you get that something bigger is going on?
Well, you know, it was 9/11, so we're all
Right.
expecting anything. I mean,
Right.
but most of the places we go as contractors, it's always 9/11 to
dangerous,
us.
right.
I mean, you always got to be aware of what's going on and expect the unexpected. But so we pretty much shut down operations that day. We told the ambassador and his security team that they should stay inside. We invited them to come over and stay at our place instead of at the consulate, just because
Really?
we had more security there. But then last minute, I ended up having to go out in town with a female case officer. We're going to go out on what I call a dinner date.
Right.
And we went out to meet a couple local Libyans. And in the middle of that dinner, I get a phone call from Tyrone. And he
Right.
says, hey, you need to get back
back
to
here right now.
the annex. There's something going on. And so I had to gather her up, got her in the car, and headed back.
So you get back to the annex safely. Mm-hmm. And then what's the discussion right there? What's going on? Who meets you? What do they say?
Well, initially, I can hear what's going on over the radio.
Right.
And one of the key things I heard and I didn't know what was going on back at our annex at first, but you could hear the guys from the State Department come over the phone, and they said, hey, if you don't get here now, we're going to all die. And
Wow.
that was, you could hear the fear and the panic in their voice. And, that just made me want to drive faster, but I've got to keep a low profile. I'm trying to make sure I avoid any of the impromptu checkpoints that come out.
Wow.
I make it back, avoiding a few of those. I get in.
Who's doing those checkpoints?
You don't know. Any one of the militias could be doing it.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to assume that, we didn't know which militia was attacking
That's right.
the consulate at the time, but I figure it's going to help them out.
Where were you in your faith at this point? Were you a strong believer? Because it seems like there was so much action that was going on around your life for all the previous years.
Well, I was blessed. I mean, my parents, they got a divorce when I was 16, but I was blessed. They raised me in the Methodist church from when I was young. We'd go to, the thing was, it's God, family, country, and the core for me. That's how it kind of went.
Right. That's right. Amen.
We went to church every Sunday. I sang in the church choir. I had a wonderful youth pastor and his wife that were just very instrumental in helping me build that foundation of my faith. And by no means was I always walking the straight and narrow.
We're on the Everyman Show.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I kind of, I took a lot of veering back and forth, but the nice thing is, to me, what I've learned over the years is that the key is building that foundation in our children. For men,
That is right,
our
amen.
job is to build that foundation for our family, because what we give them when they're young is going to get them through all those troubled times as they get older.
Kenny, you always talk about that. We're our children's pastors.
When I picked him up at the airport, we were talking about family in the car, and in particular, we were talking about the dad thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And actually, we were talking about Mark's exposure to President Trump and his family, and actually going on a hunting trip with his sons.
Yeah.
And watching Don Jr. And his kids, and that just kind of put us into a little discussion about family,
Big family.
respect,
Yeah.
the father, the centrality of the father. And even in your own family, you've had an up and down because of your military career. You were detached a little bit. You were always deployed and always overseas, and God has blessed you with a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
You have a 5-year-old
My
daughter.
do-over.
Yeah, right. He called it the do-over. Yeah, he called it the do-over.
I get to really try hard not to make the same mistakes I did the first time by being gone all the time. So,
Yeah.
or at least having her with me when I'm traveling.
That's the key right there.
It is.
That quality time. It just centers you. I
Yeah.
feel as a father, I have 2 kids myself.
Yep.
You have 3. And just when they're able to travel with us, it makes a world of difference.
Well, we were talking about the larger discussion, in our country.
Right.
And the disintegration of the family. And when there's not
Yeah.
an intact dad in the home to model and mentor and message what it means to be a man. And then the chaos and dysfunction that comes from a 70 to 80% fatherlessness rate in metro urban cities. And then whether that you're a boy and you're trying to figure out what a man is, or whether you're a girl and you don't have a dad who's spending time talking, appropriate touch, affection.
Our job is with our daughters is show them the man that they're going to marry.
That's right.
We got to be that person.
That's right.
Now, each one of us has a choice. In my mind, is you are going to be that person. Now, you can either be the person you want to be, that you really want her to get married to, or you can act like the person that you don't want her to get married to.
Right.
I mean, and it's easy. Spend time with them.
You know what?
Can you imagine the guy that marries his daughter?
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I want you to meet my dad. Have you ever heard?
Pretty high bar.
You know who my dad is?
Yeah.
No. Well, here's a
you're in trouble.
DVD. Here's a DVD. Watch this movie. My dad's the guy right there who says we're gonna bring hell on these guys.
Oh my gosh.
Did Max Martini play you pretty close?
Yeah, he did.
To the book.
He did.
It
He
seems
did
to
a-
me like he did a pretty good
He
job.
did a wonderful job. I mean, when he first got the part, he was one of the latter actors to get that part. I always tell everybody it's because they were trying to find somebody good enough to play me.
Your doppelganger?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
Right.
That's
but
right.
we got to talk a lot on the phone. We were on set. We got to talk a lot. And what really impressed me with the actors and the seriousness, not only the actors but Michael Bay as well took to the movie, was they really wanted to get to know us, not just our tactics and how that was, but our
as people.
Yeah, as people, because that, and at first I'm like, well, what do you care about how I grew up and this and that? He goes, because I can take that and channel that into your character, so I
Wow.
play you.
Yeah.
And I mean, they did a great job. All of them did.
How much time did you spend on set?
Well, it took about 70 days to film it, and we were on set. One of us, either myself, Tig, or Tonto, was on set for 40 of it.
And it was filmed in Malta, right?
Malta, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm going to give a shout out for Malta. If you want to go
Beautiful
to
country.
a beautiful vacation, Malta's the place
He was
to
talking
go.
about that in the car. He was talking about how it's like, yeah, you got to go there.
Talk
It's
the wives
beautiful.
into doing it. What do you
Yeah,
think?
that's right. Let's come back to just that moment where you're coming back to the CIA base and you're with your other case officer and you hit there. What now tactically, strategically are you guys now? What's the situation and who's giving the orders?
Well, when I first get back, Bob, the chief of base, he's on the phone. A couple of the other people are on the phone. And it's like herding cats. They're running everywhere. My concern is their safety, because I know that if they're attacking over there, there's a good chance they're coming here. And I've got 2 other guys that are kind of helping out, watching the cameras that we had set up and things like that. But it was pretty much all on me. At least that's the way I felt.
Because everybody else was out of the base.
Right. They're all over at the consulate trying to still search and find the ambassador's body. Well, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I got to get all these people in one building. I got them there. Finally got them kind of settled in why I wanted them there. They're still trying to get on the phone, talking to people. I didn't know who, because I didn't care at that point.
Right.
I'm looking for bad guys. My next thought was, okay, worst case scenario, what if the guys don't make it back from over there? Then I've got to take care of these 20 some odd people.
Wow.
When did you feel the sense of we don't have any support?
I guess I just never expected it.
Wow.
And it's who I work for. I'm expendable. I am. That's just, I've chose that job. That's kind of the mentality I had. Support for the ambassador and Sean Smith, that's another story. But I knew, and I think it's part of the military training, or my mentality is, I knew I could depend on the other 5 guys that were with me that night. And that's what I didn't worry about, what couldn't come. If they're going to send something, then when it gets there, then I can utilize that asset when it arrives. If it doesn't, then I'm going to utilize what assets I have on hand until then.
How did, and we normally don't go here on this show, but how did politics obstruct the response, and who finally released you guys to go save some lives?
There's a lot of possibilities on the politics,
Yeah.
and I'm glad I wasn't in Washington when it happened, because then I wouldn't have been there to do what I, to help save lives.
right.
But the ultimate thing that, the straw that broke the camel's back for us is Bob had told him to stand down and not go twice. And the third time he said that, that's when they came over the radio and said, if you don't get here now, we're all going to die. You know,
That was it.
And there were some expletives
That
in
released
there.
you
Yeah.
guys.
At
So,
that point,
forget
no one
about
said,
it.
yeah, we don't care what anybody else says. We're going to go.
Wow.
And everybody jumped in and was gone.
Man. So there was no, the chain of command was the need.
Yeah. Yeah.
That cry.
The right thing to do sometimes isn't the right thing to do is the right thing to do. Sometimes it's not the correct thing, at least as in following orders or whatever. That sometimes you still got to do the right thing.
You did the moral thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you know each other?
The six of us?
Yeah.
Well, I had been there about 45 days. Tig had been on his third trip. He had done done a trip in Tripoli, and a trip is usually 2 to 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. And so Tig had been there, and then he was in Benghazi for, probably 120 days. He had spent time there.
Okay.
Tyrone had been there a while. Jack came in about the same time I did. Tonto had been there a lot longer.
So you guys had spent a lot of time together, and when that moment came, you guys were as one.
Yeah.
On that.
Well, and
There
we
was
never trained together before.
Okay, right, but you were
when
trained.
we come in there as a group. Not as a group, but we come as individuals to make a group.
So your group has to form,
Right.
like right away.
Yeah.
And what you have going for you is your training.
Training, professionalism.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's that deep desire to serve your country.
Yeah, that's right, and to save lives.
Right.
No,
Wow.
that is so good. So coming now, you guys are like, okay, we're going. You're back. They come back.
They come back and
what do they say?
All they asked me is, where did I have guys? Because the State Department guys had come back first.
Yeah.
I got 3 of them were still combat effective. I got them up on the rooftops to be eyes.
Right.
When they came back, I said, I got holes here, here, and here, and they just filled them.
So
where
while
they
they were
felt
there,
right.
you were assessing what you had there.
Mm-hmm.
You were getting people in the right spot. You were looking at the perimeter. You were saying, where do I need people tactically? So when they came back, you're just like, I need you here, I need you here, I need you here. Were you kind of like the kind of the ground ops driver?
At that point,
at
yeah.
He,
At that
he
point,
was
I
the general.
Yeah.
And Tyrone was ultimately the team leader. And when he come back, I just filled him in on what we have, and
he said,
okay, he takes over.
Right.
But everything's already in place because we didn't really have to talk a lot. Because in our downtime, in the month before or so, we would always get together and we'd put up a whiteboard, and one of us would play the bad guy. Okay,
Right.
how are you going to attack this?
Oh,
And
wow.
we'd fix it.
So you were doing contingency.
Yep, always doing contingency stuff. I mean, just kind of, I call it my 6 Ps. Prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
I have a
Prior
question
planning
for you.
prevents piss poor performance. Can we
Yeah,
can we roll that into an every man?
I think we should. We
deal?
should
We gotta
do a
we
whole
gotta do the
series
whole
on that.
prior planning,
Yeah.
prevention, piss poor performance.
Now, getting the guys to live by it, that's
but no,
completely
that
different
is
story.
awesome.
Here's the way. I mean, here's how I
Dude,
look
that
at it with
preaches
that.
right there. That
Because
does.
it does. I mean, you got to do prior planning in our lives. I mean, we got to plan for our children, and that's
So
giving them the
good.
foundation. We got to plan for
That's right.
ourselves, and that's where prayer comes in, and that relationship that we establish with our Lord and with Jesus Christ,
right.
and building that, because every day we're going to face something. The devil's going to come at us some way, and the closer we come to God, the more he's going to come after us. So we got to have that prior planning and keep that faith. And that's where, I had a friend of mine, and he believes in a higher power, and great
do we.
guy, right? Great guy.
But we
And
know
he's
who
got
it
a
is.
name.
That's right.
Yeah, and he's like, well, hypocrites go to church. I'm like, where else would you want them to go? I mean, seriously, because we're all going to sin.
Right.
God's foresaw that.
This is awesome. Prior planning prevents piss poor performance. That preaches. That
We got something
the
here.
Bible's so clear, and it says, hey, we got an adversary. And the Bible has his dossier, has his file. He's a
Yeah.
bad guy. He's roaming. He's looking for a place to get at us.
sense of weakness.
That's right. And he knows our film.
Yep.
And he knows how to attack. We talk a lot about that, on the Everyman Show. All right. So Tyrone comes back. You've sort of got the sort of strategic layout and kind of the plan, and now it's just positioning everybody and.
Everybody gets in their spot, and we start hearing cars and vehicles pulling up on our north and eastern perimeter. And first thing we do is, there was one of the militias. It was called Feb 17, and they had that name because that's when the revolution started, February 17th. And that's how they were kind of like the militia that all the other militias gathered under, kind of when they
Okay.
to go after
They're at the
Gaddafi.
top of the food chain
At that time.
at that time.
Well, part of them were hired, that militia was hired to help protect them over at the consulate, which they all ran when it happened.
That's a whole different story there.
It is.
Oh my goodness.
And so, Bob had said that he'd been trying to get a hold of them. So first thing we hear vehicles, hey, Bob, it's Feb 17,
Who are these?
setting up an outer perimeter. He's like, don't know, haven't got a hold of him yet.
They're gone.
Oh, that's our first line of defense? Really?
Nada.
That's why you held us back? Because, that's what's going through your mind.
I was going to ask you, did you know who the enemy was?
Everybody else but us.
It felt that way?
Yeah,
Wow.
for the most part, it's that way. If you're pointing a gun at me, or you're carrying a gun, you're an enemy.
Seemed like
if
a
you're
lot of
pointing
people
a gun
are
at
carrying
me,
guns over
you're a
there.
dead enemy.
There you go.
Case in point.
Yeah.
So now they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
No first line of defense. They're not coming to help. Game changer.
Yeah, so we know
Right.
that we got to handle it ourselves. And about this time, we start seeing people move up through the bushes, and there's a couple buildings on that side. We had night vision goggles.
Yeah.
You start
What
noticing.
time is it? What time
This
is this
is
right
about
now?
1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, got it.
Started by the guys left at 9:30, right around
Okay.
9:30-ish.
Okay.
So, we're into this. The team from Tripoli has landed. They were able to acquire an airplane on their own, and they've landed at Benghazi Airport. They land there. They've got a bag of money to help bribe
Yeah.
their way or, get their
Whatever.
way in, and a bunch of guns. You think airport security's bad here at LAX? That's a whole different story.
So you're telling me those guys that showed up on the plane in Benghazi,
Uh-huh.
they weren't authorized to come in?
I wasn't up there, so I don't know if somebody gave them specific orders to or not to go. But they knew what they needed to do, and they showed up.
What? Okay, now we're getting to ground zero.
Yeah.
Here, it's 1 in the morning. What's the first wave? Where does it come from?
It's coming from those guys that we're seeing on the eastern side. And what had happened is Tonto and DB were in a roof, on top of one of the rooftops that covered that area. I was in the northeast corner, and Tig had been in the southeast corner, and he was moving over my way. And we were using our infrared lasers to identify where we saw targets. So we're dancing those lasers off each other. So I knew what Tig was seeing or Tonto was seeing and
Yep.
DB, and they knew what I was seeing. And
Yeah, and everybody's got night vision.
right. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, here comes this thing, and it had sparks from it flying over the wall. And Tig's kind of coming up, and it landed between me and Tig, and it blew up. It was an IED.
Yeah.
Luckily, it didn't have any shrapnel. And it blew up, and that's when we opened up on them. And Tig come running up, and he jumped up and put his gun barrel about right here. I can't hear out of this here very well. So
And just
unloaded.
unloaded.
We started taking out targets. And,
right.
it didn't last long. There was about 20 of them. I think it lasted maybe 7 to 10 minutes. And they pulled back. They decided that, the wolf guard in this door had a few more teeth than what was guarding over at the consulate. I think they
Yeah.
thought they were going to have an easy way in.
Same.
Yeah.
They had no idea.
Right.
And why did you knew they were coming there next?
I can't say I knew that,
But you
I'm
guys
gonna
felt
assume
it.
that. I knew
You're
that
gonna
it was going to
assume
happen.
that there's
Yeah.
Americans there,
Yeah.
and they knew you were there.
Well, they follow because the State Department guys, if you've seen the movie, they
Yeah, well,
go
that's
out
right,
and they take
right.
a right instead of taking a left, as we
Right.
told them. Drive through an ambush, and so they're driving through, and I think that's how the guys found out exactly where we're
I
at.
see.
They
I
followed
see.
them over. I don't
Yeah.
know that for sure.
One of the things when you watch 13 Hours, which I didn't understand, which people, until they see the movie, they really don't get it, how many waves that you guys withstood without help.
I
Without-
always wondered if they were going to run out of ammo.
we were comfortable with because we had just gotten a shipment in. About
Thank God.
2
All
weeks
right.
That was a
before.
God thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. We had about
That was a God
60,000
thing.
rounds. So I figure, there was 3 Marines, 2 Navy SEALs, and an Army Ranger. There was at least 40,000 people that wouldn't be waking up the next morning if that's what they sent at us.
So wave 1 comes, it's 7 to 10 minutes long. It starts with an IED, no shrapnel. You guys unload a volley on the 20 or so guys. How does the battle evolve from there?
You know what? We're starting to feel pretty good. We had 5 guys go over and push over 40 armed insurgents off the consulate. They were able to rescue the 5 security guys. Unfortunately, we found Sean Smith's body. He was deceased already. but we couldn't locate the ambassador's body. And they made the tactical decision to come back to the annex. We got back, no one's, we didn't have anybody killed or injured after facing over 40 armed insurgents and then the 20 that attacked us. So we're feeling pretty good. Our guys from Tripoli that had landed at the airport, they're trying to, now they're out there and we get word that they're trying to make their way to us. And they're basically in a negotiation with one of the militias to get vehicles because they didn't know how to get to us.
Right.
And of course that militia knew that what was going on. So what better way to, I'm gonna hard bargain that one and get as much money out of you as I can.
That's right.
So, we're starting to hear movement again, and then we get a phone call from a phone that the ambassador had, and it was a local Libyan saying that the ambassador was at the hospital and he was alive. Well, our first thought was, yeah, exactly, that same thing.
So you were thinking you're going over there to go
Are
get
they
him,
trying to
right?
that's draw you out?
That's the first thing that comes to me is
That's the
they're
first
trying to
thing.
draw us out because, if the ambassador was in the
sneaky.
smoke or anything over there in that building, the chances of him surviving more than 5 or 10 minutes in that kind of smoke and heat, it's almost
not
impossible.
happening.
So we weren't sure. We were going to verify, and so we sent we got an asset to go over there and walk into the hospital. And what we found out is that a little bit later was that he was deceased, and that the hospital had been taken over by Ansar al-Sharia, which was the militia that was attacking us. That's where they were taking all their dead and wounded.
Oh, I see.
So
Were there a bunch of militias that came together for this attack,
it
or
was
was
pretty
just
much
one?
that we know of.
Just one.
Do you know how many people roughly were attacking you?
I don't know. I mean, it's. I've heard estimates anywhere from 100 to 300, but I mean, I don't know. Whatever it is,
held them
there's a whole lot less of them.
So you wave one, you get this call, and then now there's this. How long is the incubation period between wave two?
It's getting on about 2 o'clock, and that's when we start hearing movement again, and
is it dead silent?
pretty much, yeah, it's just
So you can hear movement.
here. Yeah, you can hear
Cars
footsteps,
or feet?
footsteps, cars, bushes and stuff rustling up against the clothes, and all of a sudden a vehicle comes barreling down the road to our back gate, which is on our eastern perimeter, and we have a Jersey barrier, it's one of them cement blocks, about 25, 30 feet out blocking that so they can't come up all the way to it. Guy stops, jumps out, and he's got his arm thrown back like he's gonna throw something. And I catch him out of the corner of my eye and I put 3 rounds into him and he drops. And what he's throwing was another IED.
I got it.
And it landed short of our back gate.
Right.
They were hoping to breach the back gate and then come in.
Right.
And that kind of opened it up. So we were back at
now
it.
you're at it again.
Yeah, and this time they were coming at us with about 40 guys.
Right.
And it was one of those comical things, I guess, that happens sometimes in firefights, is in the middle of it, Bob gets on the radio and says, "Hey, Feb 17 says you're shooting at him." Yeah.
They were using that
Right.
against it.
They had your frequency?
Well, Bob was on the phone he had their phone number, their commander. So somebody's telling the command, I think it was a bunch of BS. And so Tig gets on the radio and says, "Well, how about you tell them to quit shooting at us? We'll quit shooting at them."
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. And Bob's like, "Well, I guess you could keep shooting at him." I'm like, "Thanks for your permission, Bob."
Let's talk about Bob for a second, because the movie depicts him as a prick.
Yeah.
And that really didn't support your
You
efforts
guys.
and support your security team. How realistic was that?
Each one of us had a different relationship with each one of the people there. I can put up with anybody. And I always figure, instead of bumping heads with him and arguing, I can always find a way to make it seem like it's his idea. And if he thinks it's his idea, then he's all for it. And he was a good guy. Yeah. Bob had a 30-odd year career serving this country.
Right.
He'd done a lot of stuff across the country, but he was not made to be there that night.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Circumstances overwhelmed him.
Yeah.
And that's relationship that's depicted in the movie is probably more indicative of Tonto and his relationship than anything.
That was a funny relationship.
Yeah. Because Tonto's a great guy. He's a hard charger. He's that guy you want in your corner.
Yeah.
But he gets wily in downtime.
It's a little wound up. Huh?
Yeah.
It's fun.
He's that trouble kid every now and then that, if you ain't keeping him busy,
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
what can I get
So
into?
what can I get into?
Yeah.
In this chaos and in the firefight, what is guiding your thoughts? What's in your mind?
I mean, during the firefight,
Yeah, you're just.
is putting them down before they
Putting them
get to us. I mean, it's just taking care of business.
That's right.
You know, it's the downtime in between that you start thinking about home and family and things like
Right,
that.
and I love that in the movie too, because that was kind of like, you know, in between waves, there's scenes of you guys talking, and you're just talking about home, and you're
Yeah.
talking about family, and how is that? I was saying to myself, I'm like, that's probably a pretty good thing to do in the middle of all that, just to
Well, and it helps you
kinda have a play.
decompress.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah,
think about something.
de-escalates, right.
And then, you know, and as you saw, I mean, Tonto and Tig, you know, they'll throw out their funny comments every now and then. Their jokes a little bit. And a lot of times that's another way that people deal with stress.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
We're always talking about this on this show, that in the midst of battles, you know, you need battle buddies. You
Yep.
need battle buddies. In Every Man, we have a lot. We launch a lot of men's groups, and part of it is where guys are like icebergs. You know, you only see the tip, but below the waterline of their
huge.
lives, there's all this stress and pressure. You know, that they're walking around with.
it's kind of like a duck.
It,
Calm as heck on the water, but their legs are busy as heck going there,
Exactly.
going crazy.
You know, exactly. And what's
Yeah.
weird is that when in the midst of battle, you back into a battle buddy.
You have to.
You're fighting the same fight.
Yep.
You know, you're fighting the marriage fight, you're fighting the professional life, the work life, the bills, the mortgage, the temptation, the lust, the whatever it is. I mean, we're learning from the Battle of Benghazi that not only does that work in the middle of killing bad guys and fighting a real battle with bullets, it's also super good for everybody listening to us today.
Right.
If you don't got a battle buddy, you're that all that pressure inside, it's gonna leak out somewhere, probably not good, and you're gonna make bad decisions.
That's
Right.
right. You know,
Right.
our men,
Right.
or the men, people, it's useless if we don't talk about it. We always talk about it on our show.
Right.
Guys sometimes don't talk about it, and that's when it blows up like a volcano. Like you said, they do something bad.
Well, Satan loves secrets.
Yeah, he
You know,
does.
Satan loves secrets. He loves you living a double life. He loves that gives him power, and that's why there's such a battle over. Well, I don't talk about that because this is my image, you know, and so well, okay, good for Satan, because you not talking about it then makes the problem worse, not better. No
yeah.
one knows what's going on. Nobody can help you
Right.
because they don't know. So your buddies who are next to you, I mean, even Christian guys
Right.
who are spinning it in
Yeah.
Christian circles, you know,
right.
they're not transparent. They don't say what's really going on. Those moments in between, I thought that was one of the best parts depicted in the movie.
The movie depicts it, you know, I mean, us as being the warriors that we are, but
Right.
I mean, that same warrior can have that compassion, that love of their family, and dealing with those things. Through my 7.5 years of contracting, I mean, you know, me and my wife had split up for about a year.
Wow. Wow.
You know, and you know, to be completely transparent, that's where my daughter came from. Is
Wow.
but then, you know, it's an out of relationship or situation. Well, you know, and those are some of the perils that happen when you're gone all the time, and that
Right.
you know you bear.
Right.
Almost every one of us there probably had a broken relationship at some point in time.
Isn't that interesting? Because we talk about that a lot too. When you're isolated versus connected, you know, that's a devil's playground.
It is.
It is.
You know,
It
because you
is.
forget you're not rooted. You forget who you are. You have, I mean, like Jesus said, you know, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man doesn't have a place to lay his head. You know, and when you don't have home, and that's why Jesus wanted to get home.
Right.
You know, and we all want to get home. And I think there's guys listening to us right now, and you know what? You're isolated. You're not connected. You're alone in your pressure.
That's right.
And isolation is kills.
Right.
Isolation in the spiritual life.
Well, and it does,
Kills.
you know, and the devil uses that embarrassment of whatever you're going on in your life and to keep you in the shadows.
Keep you in the shadows.
You know,
Yeah,
is
that's
so
good.
true.
and that's you know, and I mean, there's like that song. There's a seat at the table for you.
Yeah.
Right, you were talking about that spiritual song
Yeah.
when we were in the car. You were talking about there's a seat at the table
I
for
mean,
you.
God has a seat at the table for everybody. Doesn't matter
right.
what you've done.
That's right.
You're not going to have done something that He hasn't seen before.
Right.
He knows you're already going to do it.
Yeah, don't let that keeping it in the shadows keep you from entering heaven's place.
Well, and that's where you know, guys. I mean, especially you know, whether you're returning from battle and things you did there and things it's hard to process there, or whether you're just battling lust and a relationship outside of your marriage. You know, those decisions that we made that were unhealthy and caused harm.
Right.
In our primary relationship. You're you, and guys idealize you. You know, what you just shared a little bit about your own life and being in the battle and being a contractor and being deployed and getting isolated, and in that isolation, you know, Satan attacks.
He does.
Your wife got lonely.
She got isolated.
Okay, she got isolated, you got isolated, and in that isolation, you know, you reach out because you want that connection. And I know that, you know, just there are guys listening right now, they're in conflict with their wives, or they're separated from their wives, whether it's emotionally or physically, and that's when the devil loves to put thoughts.
Yep.
You know, in your head.
You don't deserve her. You can't
well,
make this
even
work.
or if, especially if you're in conflict, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah,
or,
I deserve
you know, if
better.
only she were a little bit more like me, things would be going different. You know, in this relationship, or you know, she doesn't understand. You know, those type of things, which then gives the permission slip to jump into sin and get your isolation and loneliness, you know, your needs met.
Well, and the other side of that is, you know, being able to forgive her.
Right.
Yep.
You know, I mean, both sides make mistakes. And, you know, well, I can't live with that. I can't live with her having done that. How am I going to face my friends with if they know, you know, that's something that you guys are going to face. Well, I always look at it, I mean, if Jesus is big enough to forgive me for everything I've done, I mean,
That's right.
how am I not able to forgive somebody else?
So you're a living testimony.
You know, it's
Every
simple.
time we talk about it.
See, this is what's so cool about this is a battle is a battle is a battle. Doesn't matter if it's with bullets or with the devil or for relationships. And that's why I love the language of the Bible where it says, but you, man of God, fight the good fight of the faith. If you're a man of God, you fight. You know, I have these cupcake kids sending me emails going, why do you use so much military language in your preaching? Why are you so militant? Blah,
you're
blah,
from
blah. I'm
Guam.
like, do you read the Bible? You know, I mean, that's our identity. You know,
Yeah,
Paul
it
is
is.
trying to motivate a guy your age, and he's calling him a man of God. That's his identity, and he's supposed to put his energy into the fight.
Right.
It says, take hold of that spiritual life to which you're called. And so this is so good. So let's kind of now, where we went from the fight to the spiritual and how there's a parallel and coming back. What was the pivotal moment for you in the battle? You know, because I mean, I'm looking at your arm right now, and everybody in the movie's like, oh, dang, Oz got hit. You know?
Yeah.
What's the pivotal moment in the battle for you?
Well, after that second attack, we knew the guys were coming in from Tripoli, and our plan was to get all the non-shooters out. And we were going to get them out over to the airplane because the airplane wouldn't carry everybody. It wasn't big enough.
Right.
And
How close is the airplane?
About an hour away.
Okay.
And so we were going to, the six of us were going to stay there and kind of hold down the Alamo.
Right,
That's kind of how
right.
we thought of it.
Right.
And
Sure looked that way.
yeah, it was, so I had moved up to relieve Ty for a little bit. He went down and got his go bag, which is just, you know, it's our go to shit bag.
Right.
When something goes bad, it's the thing
That's
I can
right.
grab, and I've
That's
got
right. And you
ammo,
gotta
water,
go.
food.
Right.
That's what I've got.
Right.
And we're getting ready, and that's when me and him really started talking about our family and our kids, because, I mean, Jack had just found out that day that his wife is pregnant.
Yeah, right. He was going to have a baby.
You know,
Yeah.
Wow.
and that was his, I think it's his third child, and Ty had a baby boy. His name's Kai. My baby girl was 7 months old. Tig had a set of twins that were about 2 weeks older than my little girl, a boy and a girl. Tonto and DB both had young children, so it was just kind of us talking about that. And this is getting on towards about 5:30 in the morning, and the guys from Tripoli end up coming in, and all of them going into the building except for one, and that was Glenn Doherty. And I didn't know Glenn. I never met him or anything. I kind of knew him by reputation.
Contractor?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Glenn was that. I mean, he's a surfer, California. I mean, he's from the East Coast, but he is a California surfer, former Navy SEAL, laid back. But if there's a gunfight, he's going to get in it. I mean, he ain't
Right.
going to leave nobody behind. He's going to
Right.
get up on the
Right.
rooftop, and that's where he came. And him and Ty had served together also in the teams down here at Coronado.
Okay.
So he come up, and I got to meet him. He had kind of walked over, and Ty and him were talking, and it's getting on that time of morning where, and you see the black sky, but then right along the horizon it's starting to turn blue. You can start seeing silhouettes. Day's coming up, and it's also time for call for prayer. I had kind of turned to Ty and said, if they're going to attack us, it's going to come soon. And not probably 5 minutes later, call for prayer goes, and immediately after that, an RPG rocket hits our back wall right in front of us. We're elevated, and it's down in front of us about 25, 30 yards, probably 25, 35 feet. And a mortar hits also right on top of the wall, our outer wall. And then they open up with a machine gun and small arms fire. Dave Ubin, he's one of the State Department guys. He was in the opposite corner over by where our ladder is, and right in front of where that mortar hit. And he yells out that he's hit.
Yeah.
And Ty immediately opens up with a belt-fed machine gun. I'm opening up with my assault rifle. And I kind of glance over, and I can see Dave. He's sitting on this box that you had to step on to get over the wall. And he's got it holding his head down, and he's screaming out that he's hit. And, everything in your body wants to go over and help him.
Right then.
But you can't, because if you do that, that's one less gun in the gunfight.
Right.
And that just leaves it leaves a weak point in the perimeter. So, for us, and especially in small units, it's self-aid, buddy aid, first aid.
Right.
And that self-aid, that's kind of the same thing with with our faith. You got to take care of yourself first, and then you got to be there for because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be there to help your battle buddy or your fire team. So you got to, that's how I kind of look at that. And
that's right.
So I'm shooting, and about that time I changed magazines, and as I'm coming back up, I knelt down to change mags. I'm coming back up, and a mortar hits about 15 feet to my right.
Oh, okay.
And it knocks me back. And as didn't knock me all the way back, I just kind of fell back a little bit, and as I stood up, I noticed that Ty's in a fetal position at my feet.
Oh.
And it's at this point I realized that I'm injured, because I bring my arm up to grab my gun, and from about, you can see it right here, it's hanging off at about a 90-degree angle. And I'm just trying to swing it to get up there, because I think I got to get my gun in the fight. Another mortar hits. I see Glenn go down. I try to get back in the fight, and then the third mortar hits, and that's the one I really felt any pain on. It felt like I got stung by like 1,000 bees, and
wow.
I figured this hard-headed Marine better get to some cover, because if a fourth one comes, you're not going to make it.
Right.
And I dived. I kind of got down and tried to get as small as I could, and everything just goes quiet. And didn't realize what happened until later. After I got out of the hospital, I got to see some of the drone footage, and the militia that had brought Glenn and his team down had taken off when the attack happened. And they took off in the direction where the mortars are coming. They either realized that's where it's coming from. Honestly, I think it was divine intervention, because they could have.
Yeah, because that's when you were at your most vulnerable point. Right. You guys were down. You guys were hit. You guys are injured.
Yeah, I was wondering.
You're stunned, and those mortars are.
Yeah, they kept firing. It would have killed everybody inside.
Did you think that you were going to make it?
I never thought I wouldn't.
Wow.
and if I didn't, then that's God's will, I guess. That's just, but I can never let those thoughts in, because right after I sat up, there's still dust and debris coming down, and I immediately went in, pulled a tourniquet out, and started to put a tourniquet on, and I got distracted in the haze and everything and the pain. And I started thinking of Ty, because I got to Ty's right over there. I got to check him. So I crawl over and see if I could find a pulse on him, and I couldn't find nothing. And I couldn't see Glenn, so I sat back up, and I was going to and I was still kind of distracted, shock setting in, and I see a shadow come up over top of the rooftop, and that was Tig. And Tig comes up over, and first thing he runs into is Dave. Dave's arm is almost severed like mine, and his left ankle was almost severed off as well.
Wow.
So Tig got 2 tourniquets put on him, saving his life, and he comes over to me, and he always says he's come over to me because he heard some whining over there, but
brothers, brothers.
Yeah, brothers.
That's good.
So, but he comes over and he says, and I remember it after he told me. I'm sitting there lifting my arm up, trying to put it back in place, and I can't get it to stay. And he's like, "Hey, you might want to quit playing with that. You're not going to make it any better." And so Tig grabs my tourniquet, puts it on, and he stands me up. He says, "Hey, can you get off the roof by yourself?" I'm like, "I know I have to, because, you know, I don't think Glenn and Ty are still alive, but in the back of my mind, there's still that hope that they are."
Right.
So, and I know Tig needs to take care of them. Can't worry about me. So I
Right.
walk over to the ladder. Another guy's coming up at this time. He helps me sit up on top of the ledge, and you know, I'm thinking, okay, now how am I going to get off here? So I hook my good arm around it.
Yeah.
I kind of slide off, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to slide around. My legs will land on the ladder. I'll climb down, no problem. Got it covered. Well, Murphy's Law, right?
Right.
What can go wrong will
Will
go
go
wrong.
wrong. Yeah.
Sure enough, my legs didn't hit where I intended, and I kind of fell half down the ladder, catching myself with my good arm, and pulled myself back up, and then walked around, and another guy come up, took me inside, and we laid me down inside, and he went back up top, and then all the case officers are there, so I had to instruct them to make sure to get all my clothes off, because I knew I was bleeding from other spots.
Right.
And
Right.
I think we ended up finding 20, 30 holes.
Jeez.
I got hit in the neck 3 times in the chest, about 10 or 15 times up and down each body. I
It's
had-
all shrapnel, and
Shrapnel.
from the mortars. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so it's like I'm living the movie now.
Yeah.
So
I think the sun's coming up at this point.
Yeah, the sun's coming up, and then you're really hurt, and so it goes quiet. That militia pulls out, and they go back to where the mortars are coming from, and then do they press the attack? Or
No,
is
they
that
end
it?
up returning back, and they come back to help us. All the bad guys are scared off. It's daylight now, getting on about 7 o'clock. We end up getting Dave off. We load up, get Dave off the roof, get him treated. You know, there's
Right.
an hour or so goes by. We get loaded up in some vehicles, and you know, the militia that helped us get out of there was a Gaddafi loyalist militia.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
yeah. So the
That-
militia that
that's
attacked
crazy.
us was one of the militias that we actually helped overthrow Gaddafi. I mean,
Go figure.
which
That's so
kind
dysfunctional.
of yeah.
Right.
That's the world we lived in.
Maybe that's
Wow.
why. What was it? A Delta team that came in, or 3 guys?
Well, there
from
was 2
Delta
guys from
said, "I need a bag of cash."
Yeah.
A big suitcase full of cash, because probably paying them all off. Who's going to
Yeah.
help me for this amount of money?
Well, and the other thing is they know the situation in the area. The guys that just attacked us were guys that we had helped overthrow Gaddafi. These guys went back in America's favor. So if we help them out, you know, I'm sure we can get back into some favor. But I ended up riding in the back of on a stretcher in the back of a Hilux pickup, which is like a Toyota Tacoma.
yeah.
And we had a convoy of probably 30 trucks, 30 gun trucks.
You
all of them.
had to be thinking you were going to get hit again on the ride out.
You know, I didn't think so, because the militia that was with us, I mean, they had
They're hardened.
Dishkas,
Yeah.
probably 10 Dishka trucks,
Okay.
which are 50 cal machine guns.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean,
Don't
these
mess.
guys aren't playing in
Don't
every
mess,
vehicle. Yeah. But I did get on, I think, CNN from them, because one of them took a picture of me in the back of the truck, and somehow I saw that on CNN later after I got out of the hospital. I'm laying in, yeah. But
Oh my gosh.
we get in, and that's how I got it. We jumped on the plane, all the non-essential personnel
Yeah.
headed out, and the rest of the guys waited for that plane to come back, because we still hadn't any contact with anybody on how everybody's getting out. We're just doing it on our own. And
Did you guys head to Germany?
well, we're getting to Tripoli. I got to Tripoli.
Oh,
I had
wow.
my first operation by a Libyan doctor. I had to go in because I had a piece of shrapnel about 1 millimeter from my carotid,
Oh,
another
wow.
one about 1 millimeter from my femoral artery, and then my arm. They put all that kind of stabilized everything in a Libyan hospital. The rest of the guys, while that's going on, a C-130 lands, and they're thinking, hey, okay, finally an American plane comes up, takes a right turn, and goes and parks, and it's got a Libyan flag on the back. So still no Americans.
Yeah.
Well, luckily they went over and were able to negotiate a finder's fee. You know, Libyan
This is
pilots-
the world we live in.
I
Right.
mean, thank goodness for greenbacks.
Right.
They're
And-
worth something.
Yeah.
Right.
And that Libyan aircraft, Libyan pilots flew them back to
Tripoli.
Tripoli. And that's kind of how we got the name of the book. Is that was about 10:30 in the morning. From 9:30 to 10:30, it was 13 hours. And it's 13. It was 13 miles from the airport to the annex. So
I think we
That's
should
very
talk about one sensitive topic before we talk about your foundation, Shadow Warriors Project. PTSD, you know, it's very serious.
Well, it's
thing.
PTS.
Tell me why.
Because it's not a disorder.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's a brain injury, post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Right.
You put disorder on it, and guys start feeling like it's...
Get a label.
Yeah.
I agree with you. What I want to talk about, though, is PTS. Some veterans have a hard time with it, and they go deeper into themselves. And you know, sometimes bad things happen. But can you talk a little bit about PTS and your relationship with Jesus and how that has allowed you to find healing? I know it's probably an ongoing process and it's an everyday process, but can you talk about your experience with your faith and PTS?
Well, in any of that, I mean, you know, my biggest problem with, I guess, if you want to call it PTS, is I just don't have patience for stupid stuff anymore, you know. And I think it all affects each of us differently.
Right.
But one of the big things that's always helped me in dealing with it, because this wasn't the first time I'd ever gotten into a firefight.
Right.
I mean, I'd been in and out of the Middle East for 7 years, or for 9 years. I'd been there 7 of it. I mean, 8 or 9, 10 very significant firefights, 15, 20 different explosions. I mean, all that stuff. But I think a lot of it for me is it goes back to what we started out talking about. It's having that foundation and that relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, you know, people feel bad for this happening, or they feel bad because, you know, and I know guys that they were supposed to be in a certain spot and they weren't, and their buddy was, and he got killed and they didn't.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, an example is me and Ty up on the rooftop. These were 81 millimeter mortars.
You're right. Yeah.
They have a kill radius of 22 feet. They were French 81s. I was within 15 feet of 3 of them, and I was in between the blast and Ty.
That's crazy. Wow.
I mean, I should have died 3 times, and I didn't. Ty did. And I mean, can I explain it other than God's will? God has a purpose for me. I mean, I think we're all invincible until God's done with us. And if you survived for His reasons. And it's your responsibility to find that reason and serve Him. Find that relationship with Him, turn to Him, because He's going to give you the strength to get through whatever you need. And, you know, it's so much with society tells us as men that to have that relationship with God, to be that Christian man, you know, we're always depicted in the movies and in TV as, you know, that funny guy, you know, the one that's a little bit quirky or whatever.
Sure.
You know, you're not the guy's guy.
Right.
Well, I can't find a person that's any tougher than Jesus Christ.
That's right.
I mean, He could have said, hey, God, forgive me of this burden. And God would have done it, but He didn't. He took the spot on the cross for us.
Thank God He did.
And people just need to understand that and accept it. I mean, I don't know how to put it any other way, that God loves you and He's there for you. And all He needs is for you to step up and say, hey, I'm here.
Well, that's one of the things where if Jesus doesn't suffer, I don't know if I'm in. You know, if He doesn't suffer. But, you know, if God can take an unjust death and trial and scourging and bring my forgiveness and my salvation and my heaven and my purpose out of that upside down, ass backward thing that happened to Christ.
That's right.
He certainly can use a guy who comes out of a firefight, a guy who has a lot of relational pain, maybe some broken relationships, and God can take that thing that was upside down and backward and turn it into a purpose, because that's the way you're living now, Mark. And we talked in the car. I mean, God is using you, bringing so much purpose out of your heart still ticking.
Yeah.
And you're saying, let it come.
Exactly. Let it come.
Let it come.
I mean, because I just think it's my way of continuing service to the people.
That's right.
I mean, that's my whole life has always been, you know, anybody in the military, you're there because most of us are there. 90% of us are there because it's our sense of service.
Right.
And that service can continue, and having that purpose of service, because that's what we're made about. That's what we are. Serve the people and serve your family, your kids. And it doesn't have to be like me out on the stump speaking and things like that, sharing the story. I mean, you know, the little seed that God plants is something small, and He can make it great.
That's awesome.
That's so true. Since we're
Anthony,
talking
let's talk about Shadow Warriors.
Yeah, let's talk about your service.
Let's talk
Talk
about
your
what's
project.
going on there.
Tell us about it.
Yeah.
Well, as private security contractors, we have a workman's comp policy.
Right.
And anybody who's dealt with that understands how wonderful that is. You didn't hear that didn't come across smooth?
No. It was
Oh, darn.
pretty a matter of fact.
So, I mean, because as a contractor, the day I left Benghazi, which was the morning of the 12th, my pay stops. I'm not getting paid no more.
Wow.
So it's not like if I'm in the service and I get injured, I go and I still get paid and
Right.
get benefits and all that. I don't get nothing. I get to file a workman's comp policy. I'm injured. I was in the hospital from the 12th till October 6th. Well, I used to be left-handed. I'm not anymore. I got to fill out the paperwork.
You leave one fight and you enter another.
Right.
Sheesh.
And the pay that you get is a third of what you were making. Contractors get paid well, but we also pay for our own insurance. And my premiums to go to work for 2 months was $15,000.
That's your premium.
That's my insurance premium.
Just because of the type of work you did.
Right.
That's the type of work you do.
Right.
So Shadow Warriors helps veterans or people that are coming out of contract work?
Coming out of contract work that
Got it.
help the families, because
To help the family.
there's no support for the families. The contractor
Right.
gets, you get a workman's comp policy, but we're there to help the families. I mean, first thing we want to do is, if you've been injured or killed, we want to make sure the family's taken care of, because your life is going to,
Dramatically changed.
it's dramatically changing anyways. You
Right.
don't need the burden of bills all of a sudden, having to worry about where the money's coming from, what's going to happen.
What
You're
an
not going to get
awesome
paid
mission.
right away.
So great.
So our first thing is to do that, is to take care of them. And, next thing you know, the wife now has to be the primary care provider of a
Right.
family.
That's right.
She may not have the education. We want to help them with that. And we're also setting up a college fund for the kids of those contractors,
Awesome.
so they can apply for a
Yeah.
scholarship.
Where can our listeners go right now to donate to your cause?
It's shadowwarriorsproject.org, and tells you a little bit more about it. And there's a donate button there. And one of the first questions people ask is, how much money are you getting for it? Well, me and my wife don't take a salary,
That's
and we're
awesome.
the two that run.
love it.
There's a phone number at the top on the webpage. If you call that number, you're going to get my wife.
Wow.
She'll be the one answering
That's
the phone.
awesome.
We don't have anybody else out. We have a board, but we're the ones that do it and take care of it.
Wow.
We got a guy like right now. An example is he was working in Israel, and he was swimming and got caught in an undertow, pulled up against the rocks, and it bruised his C4. And luckily, an IDF soldier was there and pulled him out of the water.
Wow.
Now he's a quadriplegic because it bruised his spine.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, the insurance company immediately said, well, we're not covering you because you weren't working.
Oh my goodness.
Well, so there's no liability to the insurance company for bad faith. That's
Wow.
federal workman's comp for you. So he ends up being the kind of guy he was. He was in the hospital down in Atlanta at the Shepherd Center, and they didn't know nothing about the insurance issue. And he didn't say nothing, because that's just, you take care of your own, you deal
Right.
with whatever comes. And
Right.
he checks himself out and goes home. His wife comes,
Wow.
picks him up, takes him home,
Wow.
Right.
Boom.
and he has 4 kids that he's taking care of.
Boom.
So the name of that website was what?
Shadow Warriors Project.
ShadowWarriorsProject.org. So we want everybody to go to ShadowWarriorsProject.org, and we also want, you could also go to our website, everymanministries.com. There'll be a direct link. If you're a veteran, give them a call. If you are a person that feels that you can help by donating to this cause and help the veterans, please do. Please give your biggest support.
Right on.
Well, and if you're somebody, if you may not think, you don't know if you fall in to our parameters, give us a call anyways, because
Yeah, you'll get them
we
to the
have
right
enough
place.
You have
connections.
resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We've made a
Make
lot
that
of resources
call.
through a lot. Give us a
That's
call.
right.
We'll find you help.
That's awesome.
Well, we are running out of time, and this has been absolutely
Phenomenal.
amazing. Kenny, I think we should pray
Let's pray it
for
out.
him and pray for our listeners like we always do.
Absolutely. Father, we thank you so much. Just talking with Mark, we understand on a human level that freedom is never free, that there are people like him and all over the world who are defending freedom in hours of maximum danger. And so, God, we thank you for our men and women of the military, our ex-military, our contractors, people who are standing in the gap against evil. And Jesus, directly to you, thank you for standing in the gap for us. Thank you that you said yes. You said yes to giving your very life to win our spiritual freedom, and you shed blood, and we're so grateful for that. Lord, we pray for any man who's going through a spiritual battle right now. We ask that you help him remember how much he is loved, and that he can reach out to you right now and invite you into his life, and that can change things. And so we thank you, God, for this show. We thank you for Mark. We ask for a blessing on his family and his children. And Lord, we thank you for this time. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.